Hey, Gabe, mate, I'm here for the...
I know.
Yeah. G'day there, my name is Chris Lord-Alge and I am an epic mixing master. Today, as you can tell, I'm at my console and in the studio, MixLA here in Tarzana, and I'm going to take you through one of my mixes and it's going to be absolutely epic. I've got my assistant here, he's going to be helping me.
Whoa.
Hey.
What's going on here? I'm CLA. Who are you talking about?
Sorry.
This is my console, my spot.
Sorry.
We're going through my mixes. I'm going to show you what to do.
G'day.
How you doing now?
All right. Let's get into this. G'day there, everybody. My name is MPA. Welcome to another Waves Audio Shindig. This time, we are doing a mix breakdown start to finish with Chris Lord-Alge, otherwise known as the legendary CLA. Chris, what's going on?
Here we are in Tarzana. I have a song up on the screen, and we're going to walk through your questions, and we're going to solve all your things here today, and we're going to show you how we break this mix down.
Now, one of the interesting things about this one is you might see, if you look over Chris's shoulder, you're going to see a blurred out Australian guy, which is me. Because today we're doing this inside Chris's studio. I tell you, it's like I banged down the door until he let me in. Well, actually,
That's right.
The police let me in, but, you know, who's being picky? So, Chris, we have some questions here that are from our users that I want to go through. But first of all, what I really would like to do is get you to play through this mix so people can have a listen to it. And while you're doing it, bring up some of the plugins so that we can actually see what's going on here. Can you?
Exactly. So I am sitting at my console, but my console is just a really expensive table today, as I have my keyboard, my touch mouse, and our Pro Tools rig, and we're playing that session right inside the box. So there's no console involved. The original mix that you probably heard was obviously done on a console, but we've got, we're recreating it here in the box today. So I'm going to play this song. It's called Hero by Kurt Deemer.
Just let
Man, there's a lot going on in this mix.
Well, I mean, there's not a terrible amount, but there's definitely some layers. And as you see, it's pretty simple plugin wise what we're doing.
Okay.
Where we just have 4 returns as I circle them here. Just literally vocal verb, drum verb, short delay, long delay. And we're just kind of focusing on, notice the guitars are dry. We're noticing on just drums and vocals getting effects. Everything else is basically the compression is your effect. And if you look at our mix bus, I love this one going into mine. So this is like the preheat, preheats up the mix and then moves into my Mixdown plugin, and then obviously how we get it to you guys. So
You know what I love about this plugin as well? I'm gonna gush over your plugins too, but one of the things I love about this as well is that you can turn different modules on and off,
Yep.
And actually choose exactly what parts of it you're actually using, which is really awesome as well. So
actually the way the TG mastering works, as soon as you touch anything in a module, it activates.
yeah,
So, which is cool. But I really like the way it sounds. And even though this limiter looks like it's really pounding, it's not bad. And as you see, I'm kind of using it as they came. 50% is really good on this. You know, and just this EQ at the end is really silky. So kudos on the TG mastering chain. But let's take a question here to start our mix.
all right, my friend. So, as we promised everybody, this is a mix breakdown. So
Breakdown.
We do have some questions. The first question is, how do you achieve this wall of sound effects with your guitars? Because it's like something that sticks with you with your talent and your tracks, but it's very evident. But in this track, it's really evident that those guitars are just amazing, and it really is a wall of sound. So what is it that how do you start to attack a mix with guitars to get that kind of full sound?
I mean, first of all, you start with a decent guitar sound. Now, these are Phil X guitars. He's a great guitar player. These are all done in his house. So sometimes they're a little bit thin. So don't be shy with EQ. I find that most people make guitars, they don't put any girth, any weight to them. So if you look at number 1, all right, I'm adding 100. If I scroll down the guitar list, I'm adding low end, okay? And look at this one, I'm pounding the low end because a lot of the energy is coming from that, right? So, and also the afterburner, the CLA 3A is what I put after guitars EQ. Why? Because it takes all the harshness out of the guitars and lets you push them right forward. As I'll play this, so let me make sure I have my groups back on here. And, well, they're on. And let's just listen to a piece of it with vocals muted, right? I'll go back to here, make sure that stuff is off, and take a quick listen. Don't be afraid to push it. It will fold if you add too much low end, but you find that spot where the guitar tone isn't changing, and you're really working with what the compressor does to the sound. Plus, part of it is if you set up your mix bus right, which I have set up, then you see how far you can go before the drums go away. And remember, for me, it's like I push the guitars up until I start hearing the drums go away. And that means that the guitars are taking the lead in the compressor. Because look, your funnel, your two-mix funnel, your bus compressor, whatever starts to get loud starts to be the thing that triggers the compressor. So you try to keep them right under the punch of the drums.
That's
So
awesome.
hopefully that answers the question. MPA.
It's just yet another song that I'm going to get a speeding ticket to.
There you go.
Okay, so next question. While we're talking about the guitars and the drums, another question was, how do you place your guitar tracks in the mix? How do you place those?
Very simple, okay? It's left, right, left, right, left, right. Remember, for me, kick and snare and bass and lead vocal are taking the center position. So why would you put anything in the center but a guitar solo, which is basically the vocal, right? The guitar solo is just the vocal continuing played by guitar. So I keep them as wide as possible so they eat up the corners, and then the center is driven by the punch in the vocal.
Okay, so I have a follow-on question here. This is from Waves user Todd Pernick. G'day, Todd. Is everything left, center, right, or are there elements that you place at, say, 50%? He has a hard time when he's trying to do left, center, right because it feels out of balance.
I'm a left, center, right guy. The only time I start not LCRing is when I run into stuff that's not on this song, which is usually like shakers or tambos or percussion or something that if you wrench it far left or right, it might seem to poke too much. But think about it. Look at your you're like, okay, well, look at my drums. They're all LCR. Because, well, why is your hi-hat's so far left? But remember, the hi-hat is just a direct mic in the big picture, okay, of the drums. So when you start to poke it up out of the left corner, it just comes out there a little bit over the top of the big stereo image. So I would really start to just focus on LCR unless you get into percussion that it's either center or left and right. So yeah, if you put a tambo hard left or a shaker hard right, it's really obvious. So you may maneuver it in between the clocks somewhere. So there's my LCR answer.
Okay, so while we're talking about that, seeming as this is a breakdown from start to finish, let's take a step back for a second, because one of the things I notice about all of your sessions, and we've done quite a few of these kind of events, is your session organization. And I rarely get the chance to sit here right behind you, kind of breathing down your neck. Take us through how you actually organize a session. So obviously you said these guitars were recorded at home. So how do you bring in stuff that's recorded elsewhere, bring it all together and organize it kind of like so it works in your kitchen and you can cook a meal?
Let's talk about session organization.
That was a good analogy, actually, wasn't it?
Yes,
that was a good
it was a very good
Thank
analogy.
you.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, no worries.
I can always depend on you for bringing the brains to this operation.
Well, us foreigners.
I just bring the beef. That's all I have.
Yeah.
Now, I dislike, let's go there. I dislike when I get sessions where the name of the track is longer than Mississippi, okay? And it gives me hieroglyphics. Whenever I get audio from anybody, I change the names, okay? I make it the simplest name possible. When I get guitars and they're all mono tracks, I find the partners. I find the double, I find it, and I make stereo tracks out of all of it, okay? I really prefer to have all stereo tracks except the mono ones, which is vocal, kick, snare, and bass. Because the main reason is once I balanced that stereo pair and made it a stereo track, then it's one EQ to worry about, okay? So then when I want to EQ that stereo track, I'm not trying to deal with two monos, one left, one right, and twin EQs, okay? Saves a lot of time in the big picture. I change all the names. I try to make the letter code as short as possible, okay? It doesn't really matter to me what the person's name is, what they're playing. We can write that down on a separate paper on a separate track later. For me, it's vocal is V++. What does the plus mean? +1, tuned. +2, timed. So if it's tuned and timed, and that's usually the lead vocal I'm talking about, it's V double plus, and then V double, and then my background here, fill X, PX, chorus, Okay, it's already got the doubled here on the file itself. And then I assemble the BVs, BV1, BV2, who cares, okay? Look, if it's BV low, it'll be BV space L or BV space mid. I try to make the least amount of letters because when I flip the page to this and I go into view, right, and I'm in narrow mix, I don't have a lot of parking for what the tracks are called. Even down here where it's room near and room far, it's like, what am I going to call it? Roo, like kangaroo? I could, but I try to get 3-letter names for everything or less. And you're looking like, what's foot? Kick drum. I grew up with kick drum being FT, FT1, FT2. Well, these are just my kick samples for this, okay? And snare top, snare bottom. As you see, it's as short as possible that I can have. And obviously, this one snare is just called Stella and Tab. These are nicknames because I know what they sound like. Aside from that, I made it as short as possible. And it's always vocals, guitars, drums, bass, and whatever percussion or loops are in the track. The drums are always red, guitars are always green, vocals and backgrounds always blue, and the final mix, which is sitting up here, is always purple with the bass.
And they're always in that order, right?
They're always in that order. The only thing that's above the vocals is if there's keyboards. When there's keyboards on the record, it's all keyboards, then it's the vocals. It's usually click, then keyboards, and then vocals.
It's funny because I think one of the things, and I'm fairly positive you agree with this because I've heard you say it before, one of the things that people struggle needlessly with when they're learning about how to mix and try and emulate what you do is in a part that's actually easy to fix, which is organizing the session in a way that they can actually get around and know where everything is so that they don't have to think about it. This is also something that you teach a lot when you were talking about your CLA Mix Hub and how you mix in buckets and how to name
Buckets of
things
8.
as well. Sorry?
Buckets of 8. I mean,
Yeah.
100%, Michael. I mean, look, if you look to the left, you see some of the source tracks here, okay? See, all these ones are not being used. These were all the background tracks because I went out there, I did 8 tracks, Phil did 8 tracks. There was like a lot of gang tracks, okay, that I quickly comped that create all these BV tracks. This way I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pairs, and then all this stuff is just sitting there pre-comped. Okay, if I ever need to redo it, I'll say, okay, well, look at this. This was gang, the gang bucket, so I'll just go back and redo it. It's not that hard, But once you have it the way you like it, the less real estate, the better.
Okay, so if you go back up a bit,
Yep.
if you scroll back up,
Yep.
on that track V++,
Yep.
I do see a CLA Mix Hub on that. So you've got CLA Mix Hub 76 and an L1. Take us through that combination. What's that combination doing for you?
This is my go-to chain for vocals. Is it shift then, is it command then pop the next one up? Yeah, right? No, that turns it up. Is it shift to get the next one up? There we go. And there. So this is the typical vocal chain that I have. EQ and the driver. Now, before I even say that, let's look at the vocal. Okay, if we look at the vocal track, we go to the audio suite, and we look at normalize, and we look at gain, sorry. We got to start here. This is important. Let's look at the level of that vocal. We're looking at it in peak, right? Analyze. Okay, it's normalized to 0. Okay, what's its RMS? Minus 20. Okay, so that means this vocal track's been normalized. So once it's normalized, then I know I can deal with that level. I like to normalize all my vocals. If I'm combining a bunch, I'll gain them down 3 dB or 6 or 9 in that form. But simply, first thing is this, okay? This feeds the compressor, which is always 3018, 3 and 7, okay? And then the afterburner, which takes some of the tree tops off. Some of the big problems I have with vocals, there'll be some branches sticking out that really bite. So this will hold that back in the mix, okay? So I will use this as my EQ. And as I'm looking at the song, I can either adjust the line trim or clip gain this down if I feel it's too hot. But a lot of times I will just pull this back, okay? But if I'm, when I'm driving this is a plugin that gets a little overdriven, a little distortion, which I like. So it makes a bit of an analog thing. So what I do to continue with that is the doubles, the exact same settings, and then my background vocals are getting a similar setup, except these gangs, I don't put the afterburner on because they're already kind of compressed to begin with. So,
Can we hear them?
yeah, so let's hear that. We can hear this in solo here.
Game.
Let's just get you right at the beginning of this. Okay.
We're all in the game. We all have potential.
And to me, that's the excitement. I'll put his
Good or evil, it's all influential.
And our reverbs are muted.
Just cuts through.
They come in all shapes and different sizes.
That vocal reverb?
In your face.
Yeah.
In disguises, out of nowhere.
Short delay.
They surprise us, they don't know our names, but they're standing right beside us. Anyone's a hero. Come in to save the day, show us a better way. Everyone's a hero. Someone you even know. It's always good to go. Somebody be a hero.
Solo more.
Look inside, there's no basic training.
So inside the track, you're like, wow, Chris, you're really compressing those vocals. Hey, I'm just giving them the real estate they need, because think about it. If you want to be able to hear every bit of the vocal, the smaller you make it, the less room it's going to take up in the mix, but stay powerful.
But the beautiful thing is here, and this is one of those things that I hear a lot in conversation, is you never hear anybody hear a song on the radio where you just hear the vocal soloed or the drum soloed. You hear the whole song, so you do what you need to do to get the sound that you need. So it might sound weird soloed, but if it makes the song sound like you make your songs mixes sound, then it's freaking awesome.
No one hears anything in solo, okay,
Yeah.
ever. So what does it matter if it sounds like it's blowing up or too compressed or whatever? If it works in the song, it works in the song.
Exactly.
And a lot of times that happens with the drums. Now, in this song is a different animal drum-wise. Why? Because of this like tribal tom beat, I had the drummer, Brian Tishy, who's an excellent drummer, play this in two separate passes, which means he plays all the wood in one pass and all the brass in the second pass. That gives me the opportunity to have more compression on the rooms because I have no pesky cymbals to deal with. If you look here, this is the package of just when he overdubbed hi-hat, ride, and cymbals. So if I mute this, okay, and then I play this over here, so I'll mute these guys, right? Remember, I'm the old man trying to drive a Pro Tools, so I'm not as quick as you guys, but I'll show you. So when you go down here, let's just turn this guy off. So there's nothing to worry about. There's no crashes in here. All right, they're muted, okay? All muted here because, and there's just one loop I'll get rid of. So then you can say, okay, let's destroy the rooms. And then if you go over here, we have the drum reverb. Let's turn that back on. You're like, well, Chris, it sounds a little bit long. So then, let's drop that back a little bit. When it wants to work. That's pretty good. And then, of course, no reverb is ever correct. You have to always EQ it. So make it work for the song, and then, you know. Follow what I'm saying? And then if you're like, okay, well, Chris, that's not sexy enough for me, then jump on the old CG mastering train and just go, oops, let's add the compressor. And then, oops, let's add this. And then even better, let's add the spreader. Look at the spreader wides it. That adds the sexy right there, okay? So what happens is when you have, you specify as the producer, engineer, whoever is involved in the project, if you have a song like, you know what, let's do this wood and steel separate, then you can dig out a different kind of drum sound, okay? And it lets you have more control. And since this is tribal and I want it to be like that, I'm able to make the kick and snare like, big and ringy and affected, so.
Okay, so while we're dealing with reverb on snare, one question that comes up a lot is people are asking about how to stop reverb on their drums making their mix sound muddy. And one thing that you mentioned just then was EQing a reverb, and that you can't have a reverb without EQing it. So can you dig into that for a second?
Right, so I'm going to unmute everything. So let's dig into that for a second. First of all, do you see a send off the snare top of the snare bottom? No. Okay, see, here's the sends, right? The sends are on the samples, okay? The sends are on a little bit of the toms, and the sends are on the rooms. These rooms have no cymbals in them, okay? And even when you're mixing something with cymbals, you're going to be careful about that, having the cymbals go into the room. So when I listen to the song here, let's play it in the verse somewhere, I'll show you how we control the reverb.
All in the game, we all have
See this big reverb. Off.
good or evil, it's all influential.
Off.
They come in all shapes and different sizes.
You feather it in until it gives you the length you want, but doesn't turn into the muddiness that you're saying, right? And then also, if you crank it up, check it out. You hear they go, oh, I see why it's muddy. And then you go up to the EQ.
They surprise us, they don't know our names, but they're standing right beside us. Anyone's a hero.
And you adjust accordingly when you have it loud. And then
Come in to save the day, show us a better way. Everyone's a hero, someone you even know.
you pull it back into the mix and you toggle it off and on, you notice, oh, that's just what I wanted. Thanks, CLA.
You're so awesome. Can I have your autograph? So you're using CLA Mix Hub Lite a lot, I noticed here. There's going to be some questions about that.
Here, that's a simple answer.
Good. Tell us.
Because I'm only using it as a channel strip,
Right.
use the light one because it just takes less horsepower with your DAW and with your laptop. So you can have more instances of it. When you're using it when you're using the hub factor of it and using that portion of it, then you use the regular. But if it's just a channel strip by itself, let's pull some of that extra horsepower off it so you can use it just as EQ.
Okay.
And that's why.
Cool. Okay. Beautiful. Okay. So now let's go to another question. We've got a question here from Doug. Doug Lanson wants to know, how did you approach getting the vocals and guitars to sound good and cut through the mix independently from each other? Now that's an interesting question because you've just taken us through the guitars and the drums, and kind of the vocals, but they all seem to kind of have their own specific space, and everything sounds uncompressed as a mix. But when you solo it, it all sounds really compressed. So it's like there's some really magical stuff going on here, and I'm trying to work out how do we explain this to people.
Well, it's actually pretty simple. Let's think about it. How do you make the guitars really exciting? How do you make the vocals really exciting? Make them all cut through the mix. Let's start with the fact that your guitars right here are all panned in stereo. So, like they're parked in the corners of the parking lot. Okay, your vocals are generally feeling like they're in the center, your main vocals. So they're in the middle of the parking lot. Okay, so they're not competing. They can both be as loud. The vocal EQ range is going to really be focusing in the 1K. You're really going to notice that 1K and top end presence, okay? Where you're going to try to make sure that the guitars have top end and a bottom end around that. So it surrounds it. So, I mean, the real science is when you compress the vocals into the same dynamic range as a guitar is, they coexist a lot better. If the vocals are too dynamic, you're never going to hear them over the guitars, okay? It's like wearing a shark fin and swimming in the ocean, okay? The guitar is the ocean and the shark fin is the vocal, just peeking out over it, okay? If the vocal's too dynamic, you won't be able to breathe because you're not going to be above water. So you make that dynamic small enough where there's no getting around here in the vocal. That's why the compression's so heavy. But when you hear it in the record, it sounds natural.
It really does. It's pretty amazing. Okay, next question. This is a question from Henry Din. G'day, Henry.
Henry.
How do you approach fader automation when you're mixing? What's the philosophy about writing the fader?
Well, the philosophy is simple. And you should only do this once you can get the song to almost mix itself. Right now, the way I have the song set up, you can play it from the top, and once I get the balance is the most important thing. Once you get the balance, the song should mix itself, okay? Then at that point, goes, well, I got to use some fader automation. Well, my fader automation is going to be simple. It's going to focus around the lead vocal. I'm going to chase this to make sure that he rises and falls with the dynamic of the record. When the guitars start packing in the track, well, he might get swallowed up, or she. So my fader automation is a lot of times vocals. And it may also be, let's make the guitar impact and the chorus hit harder. So I'm less is more with fader automation. If you think you're going to sit here and do pass after pass of riding one fader at a time, you're not going to automate anything but a pile of poo. So I really think that if you balance the song first, then turn on your fader automation to write at that point, that will help you. Oh yeah, sorry. That girl back there. Anyway, so to answer your question simply, only engage the automation once the mix literally plays itself, and all you're doing is the final seasoning.
The lesson there also was, before you do any kind of event, make sure everything else is muted. Chris.
Sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm trying to rebuild my laptop.
Okay,
it's not
so this song, you recorded this as well, correct?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so you recorded this, so you went through and you organized this and you directed all of the recording parts. So you
wait, let me correct you on this. I only recorded the vocals on this.
Okay.
Because Phil X did the guitars at home. Brian Tishy has his own studio, did the drums at home. All I did was align them and add my samples and then do my vocals and then clean up, intros and outros to all the tracks.
Now we're getting into an interesting area. So we've got drums being recorded by one guy separately, guitars being recorded by another guy separately, and then vocals were done here.
Yep.
So how does it sound so cohesive? Because that's the part that a lot of people online are looking at and going, how do you make something like this sound so magical when everybody did it in their own home without other musicians around?
Well, here's what makes it cohesive, Michael, very simply. You go through all the tracks, okay, and obviously the ones that are recorded, we cleaned up as best as possible. With the drums, these are samples helping the drums. We go through, we adjust the level and normalize it and clean it up. Now, Brian sends me all mono tracks, so I can form it into stereo pairs, okay, and I adjust the levels when needed.
Cool. So what plugins do we have on the drums again? We've got...
we're doing the same thing. We're mix hubbing,
yep,
76ing, and then we're even Fairchilding these rooms. We're double hitting them, okay? But if we just go to the dry kick, it's literally just mix hub, snare drum. Let me guess, top and bottom. Why wouldn't I? Same here. 76 on the snare bottom. Samples even. No EQ.
Was that a blackie, or that was a blackie, right?
Yeah, snare bottom.
Why a
Now,
blackie and not a bluey?
Blackie's better for. I like blueies for vocals and the black ones for guitars, bass, and drums.
Gotcha.
Now you notice that I have the mix hubs on every track, except the reverb returns, and if they're on there, they're after the effects. For me, it's like this creates a console. Okay, you see how there is a mix hub on every channel, even if it's doing nothing. Where I think, like right here, it's doing nothing, right? What it is doing is it's creating a phase coherence. It's making everything be on the same line. So if this plugin's taking 200 samples or whatever the delay compensation is with this, everybody's on board the same way.
The audio's passing through it.
Yeah, I'm just passing through it, but that means that my phase in the drum stays even tighter because everyone's on the same plugin, okay? So there's no shifting, no phase shifting at all because everyone's like going through the same console. For me, it's like, okay, I'm just gonna make this a console. So I put everybody on the same thing. This way, whatever this plugin does delay-wise inside of Pro Tools, everybody else is on the same wavelength, and then the song glues together better. So whatever you're a fan of, channel strip-wise, maybe it's the EV2. It could be any of these, okay? Anything on our list. Here's some of my shortcuts. It could be, you could be into the APIs, okay? But my point is that just helps make everybody line up.
Right. Okay. So I have another question here about your master bus. The question is, a lot of your mixes sound not so much like each other, but there's a certain sound to a Chris Lord-Alge mix sometimes that has a certain character to it. Is there a consistency in what you do with your master bus on your mixes?
Yes, there is. Michael, first of all, when working directly in Pro Tools, the first thing I do in the session is put the CLA Mixdown on the mix bus. This means no matter what I'm doing with the song, it's already sounding like a record. It's already compacting it. And that gives me a judge on how I'm hitting the actual bus of Pro Tools. So by using this in the default mode, it works. So I put the mix bus in right away. I don't do it later, okay? Now, what I've done here with the Abbey Road, the TG Live as we call it, is I'm using that because, lately I've really grown to love it, the widener, just the clarity of it, and just the way it's just analog sounding. So I actually put that before the Mixdown to start with. So that feeds into it.
So you're using the spreader? Is that what you meant?
I'm using the spreader,
Yeah.
yep. And,
I love the spreader, yeah.
Not right now on here, but a lot of time, I should. I can go a little bit more here. Why not? I love the spreader on this. I just love what it does with guitars and width. So right there alone, even if that's all you use, that's a very cool tool. So I just keep it simple. I don't have this big cocktail of plugins, and I don't really use a limiter, okay? Now, you can put an L1 after this or an L3 or any of the Ls, the double L if you want, but then just be careful about what happens to your drums at that point. So my mix bus is pretty simple.
Okay, so let's take a step back for a second and let's talk to the guy or girl who's starting out and is looking at becoming the next Chris Lord-Alge or the next legend that surpasses you, which I know you said at different talks that, one of the things you'd love is people to go big and beyond. Where do they start? So, for example, there's a lot of your plugins on this session, and I know for a fact that you do actually use a lot of the plugins that you actually help you make. It's not just your name; you actually use them. But what would you suggest is a good starting point for a beginner who's starting to mix when it comes to sessions like this? Where do they start?
Well, I think that's a very good question, Michael, and actually a very easy one. I give some good advice for that. talking about the plugins, just what you were mentioning a second ago is I made the plugins for me first, but with you in mind. So when I came to creating plugins, people think, well, you don't even use them. People say, you don't even use your own plugins. I'm like, well, you're wrong. I made the plugins so I can use them, so I have those tools. And then I thought about, well, let's make sure that people are going to, aside from me, are going to like them. So for the beginner that wants to be the CLA, that wants to jump in, okay, jump in with here's three important things to do. Organize your session like mine, because if it's not organized, it's impossible to mix, okay? The less real estate it takes up on the screen, the more you can manage it. Number one, create your shortcuts with plugins and try to figure out how to use a half a dozen plugins, just a half a dozen. Maybe you have an EQ chain, a compressor, a limiter, a vocal, a delay, and a reverb. Let's just start there. Okay, that's 5 plugins, okay? And maybe a bus compressor, that's 6. So find one channel strip, find one compressor. Start there. Before you start spreading out with all these varieties of, like chocolate, raspberry, sprinkle, go vanilla, chocolate, strawberry. Start with the big 3, okay? EQ, compressor, limiter, okay? And then reverb, delay, okay? One plugin, you can have that on multiple instances. You're lucky to be able to do that. So I recommend doing that because this way you're focusing on the mix, not conquering the plugin. Most people that are mixing are trying to conquer the plugin. You'll never do it. The plugin always wins. The plugin is a tool. So get a hammer, a screwdriver, and a hammer, regular, and a Phillips, and get started with that. Keep it simple.
You're very wise.
Like Yoda.
Yeah. You're like the Yoda.
I'm the Yoda.
You're like the Yoda of Tarzana. You know
I'm the
that?
Yoda of Tarzana. Tarzana Yoda here.
I like teasing you.
There it is.
Hey, how many times do we get to do this in your studio with an annoying Australian right over your shoulder? Okay, so we've talked about those plugins. So
He is over my shoulder.
Right, I'm over your shoulder, blurry, but I've got my own camera too. Now, Mix Hub, CLA Mix Hub.
Yep.
You're using the lite version a lot. The CLA Mix Hub. How do people go about using the actual hub version of that if they want to get into that as a beginner?
Well, there's a complete tutorial in video on how to use the Mix Hub.
A complete what? I'm sorry?
There's a complete video tutorial that you probably helped me do. So if you really want to learn the Mix Hub, up on Waves, you can easily find that if you want to get into details. In this instance, because the way I have it set up, I'm not using it for that at all. I am just using it as the guts and glory channel strip that it started out by. Without a great channel strip, the hub feature would have not been important because there's bucket view and I haven't even assigned anything to it. So you can easily select, you could assign tracks to the bucket and look at all the EQs at once, right? And I could just like quickly do that. Okay. And then get to your bucket there. Oops, sorry, sort by name. Sorry, there we go. And then I forget if I dragged them or not. And then we get a bucket view, and no, they're not there. There we go. And we can look at it that way and look at EQ, okay? You can easily do this if you want to see what you're doing in a big way, okay? Super easy. So I could play my guitars and then just EQ them all at once right here. Let's just move this one over here. Oh, let's put them in order, right? I love when it's in order. I like things to be orderly. And you could do the same thing with drums. I forget which bucket I did. So I could just go here and I can assign and I'll just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and I only need 6 for that because it's 6. I don't want to add more because it's going to go over. And right, and then channel view, bucket view, right, and that's just the kicks and snares. And if I really want to, I can make just the toms and this, okay, and leave these guys out, okay. And then now I have just, I can look.
So now you're looking at multiple
Well,
plugins.
now I see it and go, well, let me EQ the rest of the toms. You know what I'm saying? And this kind of helps me if you've forgotten something. Let me go to bucket 4. Let's assign that. And I can put all the stuff that's making the noisy fun bits in there, which is just these 4 guys.
You know what I've noticed, Chris?
But
Having me over your shoulder is a really bad influence. It's like I think you actually work a lot slower with an annoying Australian in the room.
oh,
It's accurate, right?
totally accurate.
Yeah.
It's way slower. So if I go back to assign, then I can say, here's all the symbols. Oh, there's only 6. Perfect. 2, 5, 6, and the loop, and then back here, and bucket view, and then there we go. There's another bucket of all this stuff has nothing on it. So if I want it, this speeds up the process.
Well, one of the things I love about this workflow is it gives me the ability to actually mix a bunch of tracks without actually looking at multiple plugins and without actually even feeling like I'm looking at plugins. I'm looking at a console. It's like I'm tweaking EQ, I'm tweaking compression, and I'm tweaking knobs on a console from one interface, and then I'm closing it, and then I'm getting on with the job.
Oh, 100%. I mean, the really good thing about assigning stuff to the bucket, just because sometimes you're working too fast and you don't realize if you've missed EQing something, like I missed EQing the vocal double here. I can look at, okay, here's BB1-2, here's gang, okay. Well, here's Phil's chorus, right? All right, let me just EQ that to match him. I can look at all these, okay, I'm adding low in here. These BBs all sound right. Maybe this is too much. I can actually go there and I can be an inspector. Like, okay, here's the guitars, that all looks right. Okay, here's that one was really thin. Solo, okay, that's right. I can move over to 2 and say, okay, here's kick. This kick needed no EQ. Snare top, all right, that sample's fine. These guys look good. Let's just put snare bottom, next to snare top, right? And then my 3 toms, I didn't notice that I didn't even bother with them. And then maybe I can carve some of the low mid out here, because that's what I normally do, and add a little more girth, right? And then off to 4, it's just the rooms. I can just look at, okay, here's room near. Oh, wait, let's just add some low end to this guy because it needed it. His rooms were kind of skinny, so let's just fatten him up a little bit. And then look, okay, overhead, same thing. This just gives more gusto to the snare and just the length of it, right? By using the hub, you're going to do that. This is all a decent balance of the hi-hat ride. So I don't even need to really judge this. I mean, I can look at the dynamic of it. I can look at the output, whatever. I can look at the input here.
You have control.
You have control.
Okay.
So super easy. So there's your bucket view. So there's the mix-up. Now, it did not affect anything over here. And I think I can look at any of them, any of the mix-up I have, and the bucket view is going to be the same in all of them. So...
What about your Mixdown? What's the benefit of Mixdown?
Well, the benefit of Mixdown is that I modeled Mixdown to mimic my mix bus right here. So that when everything's at 0, it's exactly the mix bus I use here on setting 1, okay? And it's really dialed in. So if you have the optimum level in Pro Tools, now I'll play this without you hearing any. Oh, I'll turn this volume down a little bit. Just play it, we'll look at it.
Right beside us. Anyone's a hero.
It could actually go more. So.
To save the day, show us a better way. Everyone's a hero. Someone you even know. It's always.
So you just pulled up the output of...
Because I'm driving that into this.
Okay, cool.
I'm driving the Abbey Road into this. So if I turn this output up and it hits that.
Okay.
And makes this. When it's hitting 3s, it's perfect. If it's just nailing the 3s as the heavy stuff, it's perfect.
You heard it from the man.
If it starts going all the way up here to 10, you're overdriving. Your mix bus is too hot.
Okay.
Your faders are too high. Then Pro Tools has 0 forgiveness, okay? It clips. and not in a good way. Okay, this is not a console. This is a digital box.
All right, so we've gone through your organization of mixing. We've gone through how to make your drums cut through, how to make the vocals cut through. We've gone through how to make sure that your reverb on your drums and vocals doesn't create mud. And we've gone through the difference between CLA Mix Hub and CLA Mix Hub Lite, and which ones you guys out there should start with when you are starting out or when you want to mix more like Chris. Now, I think there's one question left. Chris, if there was one piece of advice that you could give to people to get out to the world that you think you really need to kind of like push forward that people need to hear, what would it be?
Organize your session. Clean up the session. Don't even start mixing till it looks like this. It's simple. Okay, where it's cleaned up, organized, and all the production decisions and arrangement decisions are done, and you can get it on the least amount of faders without compromising the ability to have control over individual instruments.
Okay.
And stuff like this. Go here, right? Go boom, 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 boom. Jack this waveform height all the way up. Do you see any crud? Do you see any stuff before the signal starts? Do you see crud here, right?
Oh, you mean like noise and
just like
stuff like that?
Just like guitar hum, buzz. All these, people think they can just use strip silence to clean this up. Look, there's no crud. This is maxed out. There's no noise. Look, a tiny little tail here and there in a background vocal, right? Okay, but at the beginning of the song, okay, when the drums come in, there's no before it, okay? There's no anything. And same with the bass. Like, see, this is maxed out. So you could get rid of this, but this is, that's so low, that's just in between the bass. But you see how it's all cleared and cleaned at the front here. This is important, okay? Look, even see this crud on this little loop right here, but it's so low you're not going to hear it. So what do? We just get here and get rid of it, right? Bye, whatever. Okay, and then just, it's just, this stuff builds up so fast in a session that you find yourself, look, this is being audio made, okay? Don't start a mix unless the counters are clean, okay? Start from a clean playing field. Have it organized, okay? And have it make sense. I can visually look at this and say, okay, here's the song. Okay, here's the guitar's background. So here's how it's going to go, okay? And then when I drop this, I get more of a normal vision of the real estate of it. And I always have my session set up so the lead vocal, not both, just the lead vocal is, okay, I'm getting both anyway. Oh, because the grouping. So I just ungroup that. And then the lead vocal is one size bigger than everybody else. Oops, not smaller. So I kind of look at my sessions like this when I'm mixing. So the top thing on the screen is the vocal. So I'm seeing that. So I know what my attention's focusing on. And usually I'll even make this guy a little smaller. So I'm getting the most out of it. But also when you look through your session, and I'm zooming in pretty heavily there for you, is that you go through the vocal and you look for, okay, where's the breaths? Is there a pop somewhere? Okay, you can, I guess you could do this with this, right? You can just go, okay, what's this right here? Okay, what's that? Is that a kick drum? Is that a pop on a vocal or something, right? So a lot of times I'll go through the vocals, look for breath problems. Look, I'm compressing it beyond normal, beyond an inch of its life. So any breaths that are in there that are unnecessary, I'm getting rid of. I get rid of all the breaths on all the background vocal tracks, okay? Because if everybody's gasping at the same time, well, it's like a breathing contest. So I clean all that up. So there's a lot of homework to be done before you even start mixing the song. Well, that's my advice. See, there you go.
All right, folks, that is your education today from Chris Lord-Alge, the man, the myth, the legend, CLA. My name is MPA. I'm sitting annoyingly over Chris's shoulder, and this has been a lot of fun. You know what? I think I'm going to move up. Chris, can I get into... Hey, this has been fun.
Fun times.
Yeah, it's fun time.
Michael PA, my partner since the beginning here in Waves, making it happen for you guys at home. So Keep mixing, but remember, organize first, play later.
We're all in the game. We all have potential. Good or evil, it's all influential.